There is an online saying that after getting married, a woman has no home. She is an outsider in her husband's house. Although this sentence is somewhat absolute. In her mother-in-law's family, Li Huan has been married for 7 years and has given birth to a son and a daughter. She is very filial to her mother-in-law and acts more sensible than her husband when they need it. She can endure her difficulties. But in her mother-in-law's eyes, in the end, Li Huan couldn't bear it anymore. A year ago, she made up her mind to stop her losses in time and went through some twists and turns. Eventually, when it comes to her marriage, Li Huan feels very painful. I acted recklessly and caused harm to myself in major matters of marriage. Even after divorce, the retribution still exists. Li Wan's self-narration. I am 31 years old this year. But I am already a divorced person, and a mother of 2 children. Since my divorce a year ago, I have only seen my son once. It's not that I don't want him, but every time I go to see him, my best friend said to me, "It's not my crow mouth. But in your situation, it's useless to overly care about your son. With the character of your mother-in-law family, they will definitely speak ill of you in front of your son, and even blame you for the broken family to make your son hate you. You may not be able to count on this child, although I still cannot bear to part with my son. I also know that I have no choice but to focus all my energy on work and taking care of my daughter. When I first got divorced, I left him almost completely alone in order to cut through the chaos. Therefore, I not only didn't have a house, but also didn't have much money." Helplessly, upon learning that I had divorced, my mother was very distressed. She hugged me and cried loudly. Hearing my mother's crying, my ex-husband and I are college classmates. In the first semester of our freshman year, on the eve of college graduation, I had a dinner with him and, under his persuasion, drank too much alcohol. The 2 of us took the final step. After graduation, my parents do not approve of this marriage because my family is in Jiangsu and his hometown is in Shanxi. He is unwilling to stay in Wuhan for development and insists on returning to Shanxi to settle down. At that time, I was a complete romantic brain, not understanding the drawbacks of distant marriage and my parents' love for their daughter. In order to marry him, I had several arguments with my parents. In the end, my sister-in-law couldn't bear it anymore, and persuaded my brother to give me my household registration book and let me obtain a certificate. When I got married, my sister-in-law said to me, "After all, you don't listen. But for your sake, you don't appreciate it. You're going to get married, right? Go ahead. Don't stop you. But remember, if you're not doing well." At that time, I held the belief that I would definitely live a happy life to prove to my family. And without hesitation, I married the wrong person. Unexpectedly, I had always looked at the wrong person, married the wrong person, and ultimately ended my marriage in tragedy. When I had nowhere to go but to go to my parents, they accepted me for the sake of being their biological daughter at least. However, as soon as my sister-in-law saw me, she sneered. "What did I say? You'll regret it sooner or later." 4 years ago, my nephew reached the age of studying. In order to provide better educational conditions for his grandson, my parents sold their house in their hometown and bought a school district house. Currently, they live with their siblings. After I came back, my father moved into the living room to give my daughter and I a place to sleep. He slept directly on the sofa. I just divorced and didn't think clearly. I was completely confused and didn't know what to do. So I stayed at home and didn't go out to work. Therefore, my daughter and I had to rely on our parents to arrange for our food, clothing, housing, and transportation. We had to live and eat at our sister-in-law's house. Now, considering that my sister-in-law didn't want to see me, after living at my mother's house for 6 months, my conflict with my sister-in-law reached an irreconcilable point. She not only often mocked me in front of my parents and my brother, saying that I was unfilial, that my parents gave birth to me for nothing, and that I was just eating idle bread. Half a year ago, I bought a toy car for my daughter, and 2 little nephews saw it and went to grab it. My eldest nephew is older than my daughter, so he pushed her down and grabbed the toy. When my daughter fell, she bumped into a wall and her arms were skinned and bleeding. When I saw it, I felt very distressed and angrily scolded my 2 nephews. When my sister-in-law returned home, 2 nephews cried and complained to her. She was so angry that she ran into the house without saying a word and drafted a divorce agreement. She patted it in front of my brother and asked him to choose between them. Either your sister moves out with your niece. In the end, in order not to make my brother difficult and prevent my parents from being trapped between me and my sister-in-law, after renting a house, I also stepped out of the shadow of divorce and began to cheer up, work hard to raise my daughter, and take on my responsibilities as a mother. However, my relationship with my sister-in-law has not eased until now, and every time I see my sister-in-law, last Sunday was Mother's Day, and I happened to be resting, so I went to visit my mother. When I was about to leave, my mother took 3 snacks and stuffed them into my hand, looking at my daughter's favorite snack in front of me. Before I could speak, I heard her sister-in-law cutting vegetables. Although she was only processing vegetables, her voice was deafening. It was obvious that she was unhappy. Without saying a word, when I confide in my best friend thinks I'm more wrong. Firstly, you disregarded the opposition of your parents and sister-in-law and acted recklessly in matters of marriage, breaking their hearts. After divorce, you lived with your sister-in-law for a long time, causing financial losses. Your sister-in-law has no blood relationship with you and is very angry. Additionally, your financial conditions are tight, and you cannot bring decent gifts every time you go, and you do not treat yourself as a guest. Your sister-in-law will only become even angrier. Your brother is already married. That is your sister-in-law's house, is not yours. You should pay attention to your discretion. My dear brother, upon hearing my best friend's analysis, I sighed helplessly and felt that I had indeed made outrageous mistakes over the years. Now that I have figured it out, I plan not to go back to my parents' house if I have nothing to do. If I miss my parents, I can have a video call with them. I will first make money and support my daughter, and then contribute to supporting my parents. As for other people's other things, let's go with it. To put it bluntly, it's all my fault. If I hadn't acted recklessly in major marital matters and had less romantic acumen,